This guy.
Small YouTube channel from Wisconsin where he posts fishing vlogs and reviews fishing equipment. His videos are typically
What?
There are many kinds of... Hello, gorgeous people. What is going on? And welcome back. 10:28 p.m., December 23rd, not...
Yo, the new roll's coming out next week.
Don't you be afraid of him if he should visit you. A great big powerful mountain.
Whoops. Which one is it? Okay. Bro, that is so cringe. What the heck? This guy? Alright, bro, I'm just gonna... Okay, I gotta do this in the pitch black. Okay, pitch black. What the heck?
He seemed off. He was normal the day before. And suddenly, he was different. His face was odd, like a thing pretending to show emotions, but failed. Neck grew longer. His body was slender, walking unsteadily, like he doesn't have a purpose. And then, there were things like roots came out of his bed. The people noticed him, and they stayed away from who they once knew. People began to disappear, day by day. He was the first suspect. They searched for him, but they didn't find him, only to find flesh and limbs scattered across the county. Decades passed, and he was forgotten, like the man who lived among them didn't even exist. He did. And the beings took him, wore his body like a skin suit. They came from another dimension, from beyond, and far from beyond. They invaded us by a portal
An analog horror video.
called the Chamber, the horror within humans.
Holy boring, man. What the? Okay, good one. Here we go. Here's a good one. Oldest. Man in the... That's it. That was not scary at all.
Hello?
Imposter wins.
What do you want? What do you want? Please go away. Please go away. Go.
I'm right here. Hello. Right here, buddy. Right here. That is not terrifying, bro. That's funny, bro. Yo. on to the one that made him famous, the boiled one. Paper. I have no hand. I can't hear the laughter of thousands. I can't hear the feast. I cannot move nor do what I want. What?
Good morning, bushwhackers. Today we're venturing into the heart of the forest to find a plant that's as beautiful as it is deceptive. Poison oak. We all know about it, and here in Pennsylvania it's not as common, but still something to look out for. And here on we aim to uncover all the wonderful secrets that nature has to offer, no matter how minuscule or gigantic. So let's get going, shall we? Found primarily in deep North American woodlands, poison oak has many different names and places of origin, also referred to as the tree of heaven. Imagine that? In China and Taiwan, one of these invasive species made its way to America in the 1700s. It took its ground here boldly. As many of us know, it's infamous.
So that they seem real, which is interesting.
Hello, Mr. I'm Officer Gomez. Hope you're doing well today. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions regarding your condition and possibly unholiness within your home that your family had mentioned? Okay, first and foremost, did you notice any onset symptoms before you lost complete mobility of your body?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really?
Listen closely. Do you hear him? You will hear the laughter sound of child music. You will hear the trumpets play their happy sound. The trumpet blows life will pour down to us all. Together, we will be still. Together, a feast of first. Together, held by love and purest connection. Be still.
nor shall any plague. Blah, blah, blah. Ugh, not scary enough.
This is how you control.
Yeah, shut up. See, someone else watched stream, so you're scared. There's actually no way, bro. Yo. Let's see what this leads to.
This message is issued by the Emergency Coordination Center for the Tri-State area. Please listen closely and follow the instructions that follow. This is not a drill. We are issuing this emergency broadcast regarding unusual canine behavior patterns that have emerged across multiple counties in the Tri-State area over the past 11 days. If your dog begins producing human-like laughter sounds, do not attempt to interact with the animal and follow the safety protocols outlined in this message. The situation began on March 3rd, when our dispatch center started receiving calls about dogs.
Just don't dream when you sleep, chat. Just don't dream. It's not abandoned. What? see him die. Right tonight? Yeah, you right. I mean, unless you're talking Spanish. No jump scares. Alright. I really like these kind of
On September 18th of 2023, a couple of friends are meeting up at a friend's house to practice for a dance recital. They'll be performing in a few days, so they want to make sure their dance is perfectly choreographed. Throughout the night, the friends record themselves dancing solo before eventually filming their collective dance. But fast forward to only a couple hours later, and something very strange happens. According to the group, they were playing a game inside a room when something pretty creepy happened. This is what was caught.
Wait, middle, down. Okay. Oh, I'll do the. Yeah. I feel like I'm in a 90s dance.
You can only move when the lights are off. You can't move when the lights are on. You have 5 moves to get to me. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, all right. You have 5 moves to get to me. Oh, what the hell? Oh my God. Turn the light on. Something fell, right?
Yeah, it was sitting right here. Was it?
And it just fell off?
Okay. No, it flew off. There's no way it's here. It was sitting right here. Did you touch that?
You shouldn't touch it.
No, that's maybe it was like what? No. Oh my God! You guys. What the hell? That was so.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. What is?
As if playing this game wasn't already creepy enough, this happens. Now, right before the video ends, a loud thump is heard on camera. Hearing this sound was enough to silence the girls, as they already knew what it was. It was the same crystal cube that had dropped earlier. This was strange, considering that it was placed securely on the shelf and has never fallen until now. Casey, who was in this video, further adds that it seems to have flown off the shelf, given how far it landed on the floor. It's as though someone or something
In the early hours of October 15th, 1980, a small staff at WCPO in Cincinnati was working through what should have been an ordinary night shift. But at around 2 a.m., news reporter Elaine Green and a channel photographer were heading out to their cars when a man carrying a semi-automatic rifle stepped out from the dark and ordered them back inside. He assured them no one was going to get hurt, and he just wanted to say something he needed the cameras for.
And was 41-year-old James Hoskins, an out-of-work artist living in Cincinnati's Over-the-Rhine neighborhood, which is one of the poorest areas in the city. Along with the rifle, he also had 5 handguns and roughly 600 rounds of ammunition. By the time the rest of the staff realized what was happening, James already had the entire newsroom under his control. He gathered all 9 employees at gunpoint and told Elaine he wanted to go live on television to deliver a message. Elaine, however, convinced him to record the interview on tape instead, preventing the station from
buffer between the rich and the poor. And the poor, I don't know if you've ever been over the Rhine area to see the old people. They have nothing. I watch them. They have nothing. They sit in their bed all day long. And that's all they have to look forward to. Nothing's happening.
The fishing one?
He then turned that frustration toward the
Yeah, I don't think I'll be fishing for a long time.
After someone had been killed, while city officials cleared low-income housing so visitors coming for conventions wouldn't have to see the poverty there.
It seems like the things you should be covering, you don't cover. You don't, you never come into the area unless placing people at the, take care of the buildings so that the people come into the convention center and have people.
And even as James laid all of his time, he kept speaking like a man who knew exactly how the night was going to end.
See this world from your window?
I can see the world from my bay windows down the street.
Possibly a story could be done from your window.
I can be there in my windows after this, I'm sure. Maybe you can do it from my windows, but I won't be there.
This only added to the seriousness of the interview. But for a man forced to listen at gunpoint, without knowing James's points didn't stop him from being detached from the at times struggling to get his thoughts together. But his anger kept circling back to real problems and a system he believed had abandoned the people it was supposed to protect. This was unfortunately. As the tape started running out, Elaine asked if there was any final point he wanted to make. And that's when James finally said what he actually wanted next.
You may have power for another minute or so on this tape. Is there any other point you wanted to make?
I can't think of any point I want to make except give me a place where the police can come and get me or they're going to shoot at me.
Yo, one time I got the hook stuck in my hand. Yikes! Took a while to get out safely.
They've got their magnums. They want to hurt the poor people in the street. I've got my magnums. I'm ready. I'm loaded.
Hearing that, the people in the room tried to reason him out of his plan, pointing out that what he had just said sounded too idealistic to end in a shootout. But James's response to it immediately changed the context of the confession that night. James had shot his girlfriend, 30-year-old Melanie Finley. She was later found inside their shared apartment on 12th Street. This confession made his calmness even more disturbing, as it became clear that James wasn't using the cameras to fight a corrupt system. He was using them to explain something he believed could no longer be undone. And even after Elaine and others kept pleading that he could still get help, James insisted he was already blaming drugs, paranoia, and a plan he said had started long before that night.
I have no choice. I have murdered my girlfriend. I have been taken as wheelchair. I have out of my home. Have we planned? We did all these things. This whole thing was planned back in San Francisco. It was all started out. Over the period of time, I've become paranoid. They say the drugs and the angel dust people turn me over angel dust. They did numbers on me in San Francisco that I ran from one end of the place to the other.
He was certain that he couldn't come back from what he'd committed already.
I know that I'm slipping away. I'm gone. All they'll do. There is no help for me. Look, I murdered my girlfriend. God damn, man, I killed her.
Yo, why is he smiling about this?
After roughly 90 minutes, James let all 9 hostages leave unharmed and barricaded himself alone in the newsroom as police and SWAT surrounded the building. Negotiators spoke with him by phone through the morning, trying to talk him down. Wyatt, at 9:15 a.m., while speaking to an officer from the phone, James said, "Well, it's time. I'm going to do it now." Police waited another 4 hours before entering the building, fearing it might be a trap. When they finally went inside at 1:45 p.m., they found James on the newsroom floor with a self-inflicted gunshot. And when investigators searched his apartment, they realized the interview at WCPO may have only been one part of a much darker plan. They found more weapons, bomb-making materials, and detailed files on prominent city figures, filed under labels like political creeps, business creeps, and police tactics. Elaine Green later won a Peabody Award for her courage in the interview. Much of what James said that night still sounds like fair criticism even today, but the way in which he forced the world to hear it is what made the footage so disturbing. On Halloween night 1990, roughly 150 people gathered at Blackbeard's Family Fun Center in Fresno, California.
Yo, I live in California.
Attempt something no stuntman had ever survived.
Never been there.
32-year-old Joseph Boris, or Amazing Joe, was a self-taught magician from Fresno who had spent years trying to surpass Harry Houdini and become the greatest escape artist ever. And on this night, the anniversary of Houdini's death, he wanted to prove it. His plan was to be handcuffed, wrapped in chains, locked inside a transparent plastic coffin, and be buried alive in a 7-foot grave, all recorded for TV. If everything went according to plan, he would escape in less than a minute. But the problem was that even Houdini himself had nearly died attempting a version of this stunt in 1915, when the pressure of dirt got so overwhelming that he lost consciousness and had to be pulled out by his assistants before he died of suffocation. Joe, however, had already survived a simpler version of the stunt a year before in Oregon, where he escaped from a wooden coffin buried under dirt. That success gave him the confidence to go bigger. So, for the Fresno performance, Joe added something even Houdini never used: wet concrete.
Yo, are you stupid? Wet concrete. Good idea, bro.
Still, when Joe arrived on location in a white tuxedo and white shoes, he gave the crowd no reason to think the stunt was in doubt. In the crowd were members of his family, including his 13 and 10-year-old sons, which made it seem like Joe had everything under control. So, in front of everyone, he let his assistants handcuff him and wrap chains around him before sealing him inside the transparent plastic coffin. Once the lid was locked, the coffin was lowered into the 7-foot grave, and his assistants began shoveling dirt into the hole until there was about 3 feet worth. Then, a cement truck pulled in and poured about 3 feet of wet concrete on top. The plan was for Joe to free himself before the wet cement fully dried up and trapped his escape route. But as soon as the hole was filled to the edge, the dirt and concrete both suddenly dropped about 2 feet, as witnesses heard the coffin shatter somewhere beneath all that weight.
It was a cold night anyway, and when it sunk, I just knew trouble. We're in trouble. It's not fun.
Get in there, chat. Yo. Rip, bro. He tried.
Start digging through the same dirt and concrete they had just buried him under. Unfortunately, by the time rescuers pulled him from the ground, he had already passed away. Pathologists later found concrete under his fingernails. fingernails, suggesting that even after the coffin gave way, Joe may have still been trying to dig himself out. But the most disturbing part is that this collapse wasn't some freak accident no one could have seen coming. Joe's entire plan depended on him escaping the coffin in under a minute, because once the concrete covered him, there was almost no room for delay. But during practice, the same escape had taken 5 minutes. On top of that, the plastic coffin had already cracked during one of the earlier practice runs. But instead of replacing it, Joe patched it up himself using glue from a hardware store. Even Joe's own assistant later said that he never calculated the combined weight of the dirt and wet concrete together, and that his only test of the coffin's strength was jumping on it. In the end, Joe Morris died on the same night as the magician he had spent his whole life trying to surpass.
Noob.
At around 9:30 p.m. on May 28, 1982, viewers in Phoenix, Arizona had their regular programming interrupted by an unscheduled broadcast on KOOL.
To relay to you. Mr. Gwynn, is it all right for our guest to leave the studio now? All right, you may leave now.
On the screen was veteran news director Bill Close, sitting next to a man he addressed as only Mr. Gwynn and reading aloud from a handwritten script.
This is the script that Mr. Gwynn gave me, and I'm going to read it verbatim. And anytime you wish to interrupt me,
the words jumped between country music singers, religious prophecies, civil war, and a coming World War III. To the viewers watching at home, the broadcast looked strange enough on its own. But what they could see was a 38 caliber rifle aimed directly at Bill's stomach beneath the desk. The man sitting beside him was 28-year-old Joseph Billy Gwynn, and roughly 4.5 hours earlier, he had forced his way into the KOOL building carrying that revolver and a small portable television monitor. The first person he came across was production assistant Nancy Petranka, whom he confronted before pushing past her and forcing his way deeper into the station, where another employee named Louis Villa stepped in his way and tried to stop him. By it, Joseph pistol whipped him across the head, locked him into a chokehold, and dragged him straight onto the set where Bill and 2 other station employees were preparing to go live for the evening news. With 4 employees now under his control, Joseph fired a single shot into the ceiling to prove his weapon was real. But when Bill asked what he wanted, Joseph's answer only raised more questions. By then, the people inside the station had already realized they were dealing with someone whose grip on reality was slipping badly. Over the next several hours, Bill worked the phone with police negotiators, carefully relaying Joseph's demand to appear on television and have his statement read live on air. And every time he spoke to police, he had to walk back over to Joseph and calm him down before he started believing he was being stalled or ignored. But as the hours dragged on, Joseph became increasingly convinced that the station had no intention of broadcasting his message. And the longer he waited, the more desperate he became. So, with Joseph growing more unstable and a loaded revolver still pressed against Louis, police finally agreed to let him go live on air with Bill at around 9:30 p.m.
My name is Joe Gwynn. I am a watchman. Read the 33rd chapter of Ezekiel. This is about the story of the 10 prophets.
For the next 21 minutes, Bill read Joseph's 11-page, almost incoherent statement live to the people of Phoenix.
The 10 prophets are Johnny Cash, Ronnie Millsap, Eddie Rabbitt, Barbara Mondrell, Joe Gwynn, the traitor. The Arizona Republic and Phoenix Gazette can verify this story. 16 years ago in September, about the 25th of 1966, all of these people's names above meet at the same time, including me. I was almost 13 years old. We all meet and were together at the same hour. Mysteriously, I was the only one who knew what it was about. The others didn't. I did.
The more Bill read, the harder the message became to follow, drifting from biblical prophecy into Islamophobic rambling.
Then the angel shows me a book about me.
Yo, W. Jeremy.
Then he told me I was a watchman. Ezekiel chapter 33. The angel told me I would meet all these people, 10 prophets,
Holy crap, bro.
Islam used sociology on our people. Islam is using this sociology on children. They used it on my generation, our people.
This message, as if the person in that studio had spent almost 5 hours trapped inside a situation that could have changed any moment Joseph stopped believing Bill was on his side. Joseph was later charged with 4 counts of armed kidnapping and 3. West Hobart Haunted House. West Hobart is an inner-city suburb located in Tasmania, Australia.
Like and subscribe to help. Yo, W.
Ghost apparitions, and other paranormal activity have been made by tourists and residents of West Hobart. And it's honestly not too hard to see why, as West Hobart is a pretty old town with a generally creepy vibe. As is usually the case, most of these stories have either turned out to be fake, or the people making the allegations didn't have enough evidence to support their claims. So it's entirely likely that they're hoaxes. But as it turns out, at least one of these stories actually has some amount of truth to it. Back in the late 80s and mid-90s, rumors started spreading of a house in West Hobart that was apparently so haunted it drove its residents insane. At first, the rumors created a huge buzz all over town, with the locals doing everything possible to stay far away from the alleged haunted house. It wasn't until months later that the authorities got involved and finally got a clear picture of the situation. While it was true that the house's residents appeared to be going insane, it didn't have anything to do with paranormal activity, but with the fact that a datura vine had been growing through the trees directly above the home and dropping leaves into the family's rainwater tank. For a long time, the family had been inadvertently consuming microdoses of the plant every single day, which made them slowly but surely start to lose their sanity as they sank further and further into delirium. In case you've never heard of it, datura is a species of plant within the nightshade family, also known as Jimson weed, the devil's weed, or devil's trumpet, and you'll see why in a second. Even though the plant itself looks pretty harmless, it's known for having extremely powerful hallucinogenic properties, which is why it was used for centuries by Native American tribes in coming-of-age rituals and other important ceremonies. The Aztecs also used datura as a painkiller in certain rituals, namely in ritual sacrifices, and it's also commonly used as an ingredient in the ritual of zombification in the Haitian voodoo religion, where it's referred to as the devil's cucumber. As you can probably tell by
Bro, it doesn't even look like a cucumber. What?
and there's a reason why it's really only ever used in hardcore spiritual rituals and ceremonies, and sometimes by naive people who have no idea what they're getting themselves into. In low to medium doses, datura causes extremely distressing, delirious experiences, and in higher doses it can lead to paralysis and even death. Nowadays, datura is recognized by most tribes as a highly toxic and dangerous plant, and have understandably stopped using it. Before we move on, I wanted to take a minute to talk about War Thunder. The visual changes like skins can be used to make your combat machine killer who lost his son and resorted to stealing other people's children to
What the?
The American season will end soon, so make sure you get in on it now. Cropsey.
Yo, I've heard of Cropsey.
70s and spent some time in Staten Island, it probably wouldn't take you long to hear about an urban legend of a man named Cropsey. As the story went, Cropsey was a serial kidnapper and killer who lost his son and resorted to stealing other people's children to deal with his grief. According to the legend, Cropsey also had a hook for a hand, scars, burns, and open wounds covering his entire face and body, and a generally horrifying appearance. Considering the mass areas of uninhabited woodlands, it's not all that unexpected that a tale like the legend of Cropsey would make it into the mainstream culture at some point. Unfortunately, this wasn't just a tall tale made up
I am not playing War Thunder. I don't know what it is.
far into the woods and getting lost. Although the legend has some obviously made-up elements, such as the hooked hand and the horrifying scars and burns, at some point in the early 70s, children in Staten Island really did start disappearing. That's when the line between legend and reality started to blur, and the story of the real Cropsey immediately replaced the urban legend. This is the real story. Andre Rand was a man from Manhattan who was born in 1944 and moved to Staten Island in the late 60s. After working for 2 years at the infamously brutal Willowbrook State School for Children with Disabilities, Rand was arrested in 1969 and served over a year in prison for the attempted attack of a 9-year-old girl. As soon as he was released 16 months later, reports started cropping up of more little girls disappearing all over Staten Island, including 5-year-old Alice Pereira, who was playing in her building's lobby when she suddenly disappeared without a trace. Over the next decade, Rand was the prime suspect in the disappearances and deaths of several other young
You
girls.
saw that picture before? Yeah, it's because she's missing.
From a local YMCA and brought them fast food before taking them to the airport that he was finally arrested and sentenced to 10 months in prison again. Throughout the 70s and 80s, dozens of young kids disappeared in Staten Island, and although Rand was often the last person to be seen with them, there was ultimately never enough evidence to prove away for a long time. For many years, he would often be seen hanging around young kids, going on walks with them, and even taking them to lunch and dinner with
Hey,
them
yo.
in restaurants. After years of letting him walk the streets as a free man, police would finally have a breakthrough in the case in 1987 when they found undeniable evidence that Rand had been behind the disappearance and murder of Jennifer Schweiger, a 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome. In 1988, he was sentenced to 25 years to life, and while he was behind bars, more and more evidence was found that tied him to several other disappearances in Staten Island in the 70s and 80s. Unfortunately, he was only charged with one additional major crime in 2004, which was the kidnapping of Holly Ann Hughes, thanks to which he will spend the next 13 years behind bars until 2037. If he lives that long, he'll be 93 by the time he gets out.
Damn.
The Maine Hermit. The Kennebec Valley is one of the most beautiful regions in Maine, with over 5,000
That is pretty beautiful.
rolling hills and natural paradise surrounding the Kennebec River.
Yo.
Cabin owners of the North Pond area and
Have you guys heard of the Appalachian Trail? I kind of want to hike that. Would it be cool if I streamed it one day?
over 1,000 break-ins in the North Pond cabins. For decades, nobody knew who was responsible for the thefts, especially since they were always carried out when there was no one home. As the cabin owners soon noticed, the break-ins seemed to follow a pattern, always peaking in the days before Memorial Day and after Labor Day. As for the stolen items themselves, they ranged from food to cooking utensils to books to propane tanks to toiletries of all kinds. In the absence of a concrete suspect, the locals eventually named the thief the North Pond Hermit, even though by this point there was nothing to suggest the break-ins were being carried out by a single person. Although it wasn't uncommon for groups of homeowners to venture out into the woods to try to find the North Pond Hermit, they never found a trace, which only added to the legend's mystery. One afternoon in 2002, 100 people attended a North Pond homeowners meeting, and when someone asked how many of them had suffered break-ins, almost all of them raised their hands. As you can probably guess, the North Pond Hermit quickly turned into somewhat of a boogeyman, with the legend frequently being
Boogeyman. Bigfoot? Yo.
behind the break-ins would ever be found. But in April 2013, a man named Christopher Thomas Knight was arrested in the middle of the woods in the North Pond area by an officer who had made it his sole mission to bring the thief to justice. As soon as he was brought to the police station, the cops asked him why he wasn't answering any of their questions. At first, it seemed as though he was having trouble speaking, but eventually he responded that he was ashamed of himself. As it was later revealed, Christopher had been living out in the middle of the woods by himself in an unheated nylon tent, surviving only on the things he stole from nearby North Pond cabins. Shockingly, he had survived winter temperatures of 20 degrees below zero for years and hadn't been to a doctor or taken any medicine for 3 decades. What's most incredible about the hermit's story is that for the entire time he lived in the woods, he didn't have a single conversation with another human being, except for one time when he ran into a hiker and only said hi. Understandably, Chris had lost interest in keeping track of time, so when he was asked how long he had been in the woods by himself, he replied, since the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown, which took place in 1986. As investigators later found out, he was 20 years old when he decided to become a hermit, just a couple of years after high school. He never gave the authorities a real reason why he decided to disappear. In all his years of isolation, he went to extreme lengths to preserve his privacy. He never lit fires, only moved at night, and hadn't had any kind of communication with the rest of society for more than half of his life.
Dang.
Never driven a car, sent an email, or even known what the internet was until his arrest. Interestingly, as the cops dug deeper and deeper into his story, they realized that his only real possessions were his glasses, which he had been wearing for 30 years and could even be seen in his Lawrence High School yearbook picture from 1984. Everything else, down to his underwear and jacket, had been stolen. After the investigation, Knight was sentenced to 7 months in prison, after which he once again disappeared. According to the cops, he's now living a quiet, peaceful life in rural Maine. Purple Aki. Throughout the late 1980s
Yo.
and 90s, rumors of a massive bodybuilder called Purple Aki began to surface in the northwest of England. According to the allegations, Purple Aki would supposedly walk the streets of Liverpool hunting down young, muscular men and rugby players and oddly ask them if he would let them feel their muscles. If they complied, he would allegedly squeeze their muscles for much longer than was considered socially acceptable and would then ask them to perform squats so he could feel their quad muscles. Some teenagers reported that Purple Aki even went as far as to ask them to pose for him, and often offered exercise and nutrition advice for those who gave him the time. Because the rumors were so incredibly ridiculous, nobody really took them too seriously at first, and eventually the story of Purple Aki turned into an urban legend, with crazy details being gradually added to the tale, including one where Purple Aki would allegedly swallow teenagers whole if they let him feel their muscles.
That's wild.
As time went on, it became clear that Purple Aki wasn't just a character created by bored teenagers looking to get some laugh from their friends, but a real person named Akinwole Arobic. Aki was often seen traveling across England by train carrying a plastic bag and asking young men if he could feel their muscles. Naturally, this made a lot of people uncomfortable, and it wasn't uncommon for Aki's face to be featured in local newspapers after several encounters with the law. Most of the accusations against him were related to his creepy behavior around teenage boys, but around
Yo, that is scary, bro. Look at that.
early that year, 16-year-old Gary Keller was walking home from school when he ran into Purple Aki, who immediately asked to feel his muscles. Freaked out by the weird request, Gary said no and ran away. Later that same year, Aki followed Gary to a local outdoor swimming pool, and when the teenager noticed, he ran to New Brighton train station and jumped onto the railroad tracks to get away from Aki. Sadly, the story ended in tragedy, as Gary was accidentally electrocuted by one of the rails. Considering the whole thing happened because Gary was being chased, Purple Aki was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, charged with harassing 14 different teenage boys, and sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. In 1988, Aki filed an appeal and complained that the only reason he had been convicted was because he was black. Ultimately, the judges agreed there wasn't enough evidence to prove Aki had been directly responsible for Gary's death, and believe it or not, he was freed and awarded £35,000 in compensation. Between 1988 and 2006, Aki went in and out of jail for failing to resist his compulsion to touch, feel, and measure other people's muscles. And in 2003, he was arrested for an additional 15 charges of harassment and witness intimidation, for which he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Just like any other predator, he was also forbidden from waiting outside schools in the area. A few months later, he was jailed for 15 months for getting up to his same antics. Upon his release, he was once again arrested a few weeks later in 2010, and then again in 2015. After his latest release, he reportedly moved to Leeds, and rumors started cropping up that he had passed away during the pandemic. However, those rumors were put to rest when videos started surfacing in 2023 of Aki walking the streets of Leeds asking random dudes to, you guessed it, feel their muscles. As of today, Purple Aki is alive and well, and will probably continue his same behavior with or without permission for many years to come.
That's wild. POV my window. Most of the forests have not. Yo. Yo, how are your fries?
Based on the dozens of allegations that surfaced over the years, the figure has been described as being around 6 feet tall and always wearing a vintage-looking gas mask covering his entire face, a boiler suit, and a cloak. Most people who supposedly ran into the figure reported he or she was completely harmless, but this didn't make the encounters any less terrifying, and it wasn't uncommon for people to report the figure to the police when their children reported feeling scared. As expected, it didn't take local residents long to start adding their own crazy twist to the story, with some claiming that the creature was the ghost of a mentally unstable soldier, while other popular theories assured it was an alien. For a while, the story was classified as an urban legend, and the mysterious humanoid was given the name Lei Loyan, also known as the Ghost or the Hermit of Malls. Throughout the early 2000s, Lei Loyan was mostly the subject of local oral legend because there was no real evidence to support its existence. But in 2013, the story gained international attention when the Swiss/French newspaper Le Matin published the first ever photograph of Lei Loyan, which was sent in by a hiker. After the photograph was published, there was no turning back, as people from all over the country started to make trips to the woods outside malls for a chance to catch a glimpse of Lei Loyan. The last known sighting of Lei Loyan took place in June 2013, when a local woman named Marianne Desclous saw the figure clutching a bunch of flowers as she was walking outside. Later that year, Lei Loyan's clothes were found in the middle of the woods, along with a wooden note titled "The Death Certificate and Will of the Ghost des Malls." In the letter, Lei Loyan accused the media of having murdered a harmless being by revealing its existence and turning him into a circus freak. The letter also mentioned that due to the unwanted attention, Lei Loyan had to abandon its daily walks, which were referred to as happiness therapy in the letter. After the cryptic note was published in the newspaper, many people concluded that Lei Loyan had taken its own life, although this has never been confirmed. As of 2024, nobody has ever seen Lei Loyan's true face, and many people have theorized that the figure was possibly a woman with a facial disfiguration who didn't want people to see her, which is supposedly why she wore the gas mask. But this line of reasoning will probably remain unconfirmed forever.
Just looks like a paintball player. Dang, microwave broke. Rip. Yo, you guys heard of the Bunny Man?
The story itself has a lot of elements of a typical urban legend and is kind of hard to believe, but my research also has completely based on a true story. In 1970, a couple was parked in a driveway close to a bridge on Colchester Road in Fairfax County.
According to legend, in 1900.
Yo, you guys will be terrified of this. I used to be scared of this when I was a kid.
Sarah.
This one.
Sarah.
Have you guys seen this before?
So she got up and started to head down. As she got to the stairs, her mother pulled her into her room and said,
I heard it too.
Yo.
Stay in here and don't make a sound.
Oh my god. Yo. Damn. All right. Well, I'm going to switch to an Among Us stream. All right.